Can you imagine walking into a peaceful church, expecting to find quiet solace, only to discover a horrific scene that would change the course of your life? Picture this: a young woman, freshly married, goes to pray, and never comes back. What happened inside that church has left a stain on Stanford's history, a mystery that lingered for decades. The murder of Arlis Perry isn't just another crime, it's a case that still raises questions about the darkness lurking in places meant for peace. Welcome back to Uncovered True Crime, where we bring you stories that are as haunting as they are real. Today's case takes us back to 1974, on the campus of Stanford University, where the brutal and mysterious murder of 19-year-old Arlis Perry rocked the community. For decades, this case baffled investigators, left a young widow grieving, and sparked rumors of cult activity, satanic rituals, and cover-ups. It wasn't until recent breakthroughs in forensic science that the truth began to unfold, but even now, not every question has been answered. Let's dive deep into the tragic case of Arlis Perry and the twisted paths it led investigators down. Arlis Perry was just 19 years old when her life was taken from her. She was a bright, hopeful woman from a small town in North Dakota, where she grew up in a tight-knit, religious community. Her faith was important to her, and it shaped many of her decisions, including her choice to marry her high school sweetheart, Bruce Perry, in August 1974. The couple was young and deeply in love, excited to start their new lives together at Stanford, where Bruce was pursuing pre-med. Everything seemed perfect for the newlyweds as they adjusted to life in California. Arlis worked as a receptionist at a local law firm while Bruce immersed himself in his studies. They were a young couple, full of dreams, living on a prestigious campus. But in a matter of weeks, their idyllic life would be torn apart. On the night of October 12, 1974, something unthinkable happened. It was a quiet Saturday evening when Arlis and Bruce had a small disagreement, something that couples often do, nothing serious, just the kind of argument that stems from stress and a long day. After the spat, Arlis decided to take a walk to clear her mind. She mentioned she was going to the Stanford Memorial Church to pray. It was late, around 11:30 p.m., but this wasn't unusual for Arlis. She found solace in her faith, and the church was just a short walk from their apartment. Bruce didn't worry much at first. He knew where she was, and he assumed she'd return soon. But as midnight came and went, his concern grew. By 3 a.m., there was still no sign of Arlis. Frantic, Bruce called the police to report her missing, fearing the worst. In the early morning hours of October 13th, campus security guard Stephen Crawford was making his rounds when he noticed that one of the side doors to the Memorial Church was unlocked. As he stepped inside, he came upon a scene so horrific that it would haunt him for the rest of his life. There, beneath the church's towering cross, was Arlis's lifeless body. She had been partially undressed, her body arranged in a disturbing manner that suggested something ritualistic. An ice pick was lodged into her skull, and the evidence of sexual assault was unmistakable. But what made this crime even more chilling was how deliberately staged the scene was. It looked like more than just a murder. It looked like a statement. News of the murder spread quickly, and soon, wild theories began to circulate. Some believed that Arlis had stumbled into something far darker, a satanic cult operating on campus, or perhaps she had been targeted for her religious beliefs. At the time, rumors swirled about cult activity in the Bay Area, particularly surrounding the Church of Satan, founded by Anton LaVey. The bizarre staging of Arlis's body only fueled these speculations. But despite these theories, the investigation struggled to find any concrete evidence. Investigators interviewed dozens of people, students, faculty, friends of Arlis, but nothing stuck. All leads seemed to fizzle out. The case, though captivating and terrifying, began to grow cold. Even the initial suspect, Stephen Crawford, the security guard who discovered her body, wasn't arrested. He was questioned but eventually let go due to a lack of evidence. For years, the case remained unsolved. No new leads, no new suspects. Arlis's family, particularly her grieving husband Bruce, were left with nothing but questions. But the story doesn't end there. Fast forward to 2018, when cold cases across the country were being revisited thanks to advancements in DNA technology. The case of Arlis Perry was no exception. Investigators had preserved physical evidence from the scene, and with new tools at their disposal, they were able to extract a DNA profile from Arlis's clothing. The results were staggering. The DNA matched Stephen Crawford, the very man who had discovered her body all those years ago. Armed with this new evidence, authorities planned to arrest Crawford and finally bring justice for Arlis. But in a dramatic twist of fate, just as police arrived at his apartment to serve the warrant, Crawford took his own life. A single gunshot ended the life of the man who had evaded justice for over 40 years. With his death, investigators closed the case, but for many, it left a bittersweet taste. Crawford had never confessed, and with his death, some secrets would go to the grave with him. The murder of Arlis Perry was solved, but not everyone was convinced the full story had come to light. Did Crawford act alone, or was there a darker, more insidious motive behind the brutal staging of her body? The theories about satanic involvement, once dismissed as outlandish, linger in the background of this case. For Arlis's family, while the case may be officially closed, the scars of her loss will never truly heal. What drives someone to commit such a horrific crime in a place meant for peace and reflection? And why did it take so long for justice to be served? These are the questions that continue to haunt those who know the story of Arlis Perry, a name that will forever be etched in the shadows of Stanford. The satanic killer theory had captivated people for years, with many believing that Arlis Perry's death was the result of a sinister cult-related murder. One version of this theory even suggested that, just days before her murder, Arlis was seen arguing with a man at her workplace. On the night of her death, it was claimed that she deliberately provoked an argument with her husband, Bruce, so she could secretly meet this mysterious man, who would ultimately end her life. However, the truth behind her murder was far less sensational. In 2016, cold case investigators began re-examining the evidence and made a startling discovery. It turned out that the original investigators had mislabeled key pieces of evidence. The pants they believed belonged to Arlis were actually her husband's, Bruce's. The pants Arlis had been wearing at the time of her murder had been misfiled and, as a result, had never been properly examined. Realizing this mistake, the investigators immediately corrected it. They sent the right pair of pants for forensic analysis and found semen on them. Investigators ran DNA tests against every person of interest they had interviewed in the case, retracing their steps and revisiting leads. It would take another 2 years, until 2018, a full 44 years after Arlis's murder, before they finally identified her killer, Stephen Crawford, the Stanford security guard who had originally discovered her body. As much as Stephen Crawford seemed to enjoy his role at Stanford, he often took pleasure in speaking poorly about the university. Despite his grudge, Crawford continued to work there for another 2 years following Arlis Perry's murder before eventually leaving. However, in 1992, his ex-wife alerted police that he had stolen thousands of valuable items, around 2,300 books, photographs, and ancient artifacts, from Stanford's campus. Crawford had taken rare and priceless items from the university's libraries and the Department of Anthropology, including leather-bound Latin texts dating back to the 16th century. These items required specialized care, but Crawford had done little to preserve them. When asked why he stole these irreplaceable treasures, his response was chillingly simple. He reportedly said, "I just liked old things." In 2016, as part of the cold case investigation, detectives interviewed Crawford again. They informed him that new evidence had been discovered but did not specify what it was or whether it directly linked him to Arlis's murder. Nevertheless, Crawford seemed to understand that the net was closing in. Although he had never voluntarily provided police with a DNA sample, after the interview, detectives discreetly collected a water bottle he had discarded. This bottle was tested against the semen sample found at the crime scene. After that interview, Crawford wrote a suicide note but initially failed to act on it. He held on to the note, as if waiting for the day when his dark secrets would finally be exposed. When the DNA results came back, confirming that Crawford was the man responsible for the murder, Santa Clara County detectives obtained an arrest warrant. Despite his advanced age, he was in his 70s, the detectives anticipated a relatively straightforward arrest. However, when they arrived at Crawford's small studio apartment, things didn't go as expected. After knocking on his door, Crawford asked for a moment to get dressed. A few minutes passed, and when he didn't respond, they entered the apartment using a key provided by the landlord. Inside, they found Crawford sitting on his bed, holding a gun. The small size of the apartment forced the detectives to retreat to safety, but just as they stepped out, a gunshot echoed from inside the room. Stephen Crawford, the man who had brutally taken Arlis Perry's life 4 decades earlier, had ended his own life before facing justice. Crawford's suicide was his final act of evading responsibility for the crime he had committed. After his death, investigators searched his apartment and found a copy of the book The Ultimate Evil. It appeared that Crawford took pleasure in seeing his own crime connected to larger, sensational conspiracy theories. Tragically, Arlis Perry's father passed away just 3 months before learning the identity of his daughter's killer. Nearly 45 years after her murder, Arlis's memory can finally be laid to rest, and the truth about what happened to her is now known. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. If you're interested in more content like this, consider subscribing to our channel to stay updated on future uploads. You can also like and comment to help our content appear on your homepage. And if there's a case you'd like us to cover, feel free to email us at uncoveredtruecrime1@gmail.com. Thanks again for watching, stay safe out there.